Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
I've learned so much from this guy in that you can have one life and then it turns into another life. And just the flashbacks and the history of John Riggio. Now, he is an accomplished architect in the New York City metro area. And we've talked about and actually seen some of his designs, both residential and commercial, over the years. But come to find out that he was also a tennis pro back in the day when he was in his 20s. And we've been centering on that for a while and all the stuff that happened. I mean, playing some of the major, biggest players in sports history back then. And he was barely 20-something years old. And he's back with us today. Going to learn more. John, welcome. How you doing?
Good. Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm well. Yeah. So I know we've talked about in your history as a professional tennis player back then that they would give you cars. And again, you got to visualize you're 22 years old and, oh, well, here, take this Mercedes. Here's another car. You had mentioned a McLaren back then? They was that part of a contract? What was the deal with that car?
Yes. So at this time, I was playing with the Peros group, and since they could see all the cars parked in the parking lot there, they really suggested that I have a really excellent car that would match my playing ability and the level of my contract and everything like that. And one car that was available was a very expensive car called McLaren F1. This was really a very expensive sports car. And they had a salesman who was leasing these cars. They gave me a call. So on this lease was really my lease. They didn't work it really directly with the sponsor. So I talked to the lease guy, and everything was going good. I was arranging for a lease at that time just to start off with a $3,000 lease for like 3 weeks. And things were good. But what happened was there was still the problem where I was still like too young to really drive the car. So what they did was that lease company did a very nice thing, and he was so impressed with me playing professional tennis, and everyone was there, and they were going to see this car. Maybe it would even get seen on television, that he brought the car there for free. So since I was there from like 7:30 in the morning to 7:30 at night playing tennis, I didn't have much time to drive the car anyway. I was just going to sit there in the parking lot. So this car became my new show car. He parked the car there, and this was my new car. It didn't cost me anything. I didn't have to pay any money for it. It's completely free, which is a very nice gift. And a lot of people, when they came there, they knew it was my car, and they're looking at it. It was very impressive. So that really filled that spot of having a car there that was a really good car. And so that worked really good, and the car stayed there. It was a very expensive car, and that really matched my contract and my playing level and everything. So and then of course that was really sort of like the beginning of me maybe even just driving that car later on and things like that. So that car was there. It was a car that was really being leased. I wasn't going to own the car anyway. It was just leased for a temporary amount of time. So that worked really good. So I did get the car on the site. And so that was an excellent car. It was a very expensive, exotic car. And that worked really good. And then one thing with that car was at the time I had explained that there was a lot of people there at the Inner Circle with $25 million of contracts or higher. And what happened was I made a new friend. My girlfriend was off the scene for a while, and then this was a new girlfriend, and this was really someone who already had a really large contract, like $25 million contract, and was very big in entertainment. She was an adult entertainer, and her name was Black Diamond. And we have some pictures together. They took photographs of us together. and this was really like a new potential marriage. And so the marriage is really sort of Carlos Scipio and Black Diamond. That is really our
Wow.
relationship, and this was really good. So we were really becoming superstars, and this was a big uh, relationship together, and that was very good. And
Was there any, did people look a certain way knowing that, and Carlos Scipio, do I have that right?
yes,
That was one of your tennis names,
well, the thing about this relationship also is that we were both part of Perot, so we're both really like uh, uh, with the same company,
oh, okay.
and so this was really big, and we both are really having our entertainment um, and our sort of like publicity together. So that was really good, and this was a really important point, and it was pretty good, and the relationship was going very good, and so at that point things were really sort of like a very nice entertainment relationship, and they were having professional photographers come and taking pictures of us together there. And this was really, maybe it was going into tabloids, advertisements somewhere, but they have photographs of us together, and that was very good. And so that was one point that was also happening at that time. And then the next time, just thinking about the past with all those teams from the Pacific, there's one country I left out, and one that was South Korea. I did play the South Korean team. And the one thing about the South Korean team that was different than the Japan team is that they were already aware that I was a player that South Korea liked, because I already had this big uh, fan that used to always come and watch me play at Sutton East. And her help of sending photographs to South Korea and things like that really helped me. They already knew about me. So playing with them, they sort of had an idea that I was someone friendly to them. So that was good. And when I played the South Korean team, I was winning really big, like with the Japan team. I remember I did lose one match to one of their players. And this player was so happy that he was able to win this one match. And this was going on for I don't know how many days or weeks, but he was very happy about it. But what happened was, as I played the team, I won all the matches, and he did not win all of his matches. He wasn't winning all the matches, he was losing some of them. So I was able to get to play him again, and everyone was there watching. This was a big match. And I was able to study how I played him the first time. I plugged all the holes, and by doing that, when I played him the next time, I really was able to completely win very confidently. I beat him like 6-0, 6-0. And their coach, because of that, really reprimanded him really bad in front of him. He beat him up. And that was
Oh,
really what happened to him. So I ended up winning that one. But the South Korean team was sort of happy to see me. They already knew about me, so that was good. I mean, so that was different than the other teams. I think one other team I did remember also was the Guam team. They only had one member at that level playing, and so I did play him too.
were
And
they, John, with the South Korean team compared to everybody that you played and or played alongside, and some of the biggest names, Boris Becker, John McEnroe, on and on and on. Were they good? Were they really, really good, that team?
yes,
Hmm. They were a challenge to play.
yes, every match was very difficult. Whenever I play these level matches, you have to play so perfectly. And this
Uh,
comes from years of experience, because it took a long time to really to move up through the ranking numbers and things like that. Is I really always had to really concentrate on every game, and you really had to try to play as perfect as possible. if you were to lose like even 1 point during any game, you could end up just losing the whole game, and it could make it where you lose the whole match. You really had to watch every point on each game, and that is so
Mm.
playing them was very difficult. And so that was what was happening. I think going back to the Japan team, I remember the Japan team, they were playing me, and they were playing me as hard as possible. They were hitting their serve as hard as possible against me. They weren't just putting the ball in play. They were really trying to ace the ball against me. And I think what happened at that point is there was a lot of things happening on television at this point. They had the coach of the Japan team on television. He was there live television, internationally, nationally, locally. My neighbor was telling me what he was saying. No one told me about what happened with his interview, but he was using some words. I think he was translating his words a little wrong, but what he was saying was that he did admit that I was beating the team. And I think what he was using some wrong words, saying that I was really doing cruel things to them, beating them up on the court. And what he was really saying was I was, hitting the ball very fast, and they couldn't get to the ball. So it felt like they were this cruel things were happening to them because of that.
Yeah, like
But
not
so he
not
was using
properly
some wrong
translated.
words, but just translating that what he meant was really that I was hitting the ball very hard back, and they were hitting the ball hard and towards my court. And just since I was able to beat them on the court, it turns out that they felt like they were really cruel things were happening, that they were getting beat up on the court. But of
Wow.
course, it was just a matter of the ball, of a hard matches being played, and that's it. And I was able to win the matches. That's really what was happening. But that was on television, live, right in the New York City metropolitan area, being broadcast to Japan. And I remember even at that time, they even had like some sport reporters on like Channel 9, where I remember seeing that late at night on television, the sport report, that he was recounting what happened with this whole thing with the Japan tournament, and he was saying very clearly that that I won the tournament on television. It was so the whole thing with them trying to at one point say I was disqualified and things like that did not go through to the local television and sports. They knew that I did win that tournament, and there some games that they were playing with that weren't successful, and so that's what happened with that. Then really the next thing was really with the Japan team was that $100 million contract was really written right in Newsday sports section. I remember reading it because my sponsors had told me to look for it in the newspaper, and it was right there. What happened with that is very interesting with sport business. So as we get into that $100 million contract, they didn't really know how to hire a publicist here in the US. They had to really have a publicist pay just $1,500, and that would put the name Carlos Scipio in the newspaper. So what happened was there was only like a couple days for them to do this, to put this together. And unfortunately, they didn't bother with it. They weren't able to do it. So they had to put another name in there. So my name is in Newsday, but they just put it in, like, say you would say undisclosed name or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like the top three players. One was in basketball. Then there was another in the top three was in baseball, and myself in tennis. I forget if I was the number one or number two. I think I was the in all sports it might have been the number two as far as the amount of money, total amount of money. But in tennis, it was obviously clearly number one. It was way higher than any other player, and this includes the whole world of tennis players. So that was pretty big, and that was in the newspaper. So I think this thing with the publicist, you need to have a licensed publicist. This is another thing like having an agent. You know, a licensed publicist, they have to verify the name is legally copyrighted, and then the fee of $1,500 is a small amount. I think out of my salary, which was going up to $400,000 a year, $1,500 is very easy to take $1,500 and just pay it. But it had to do with the procedure of really having a publicist verify the name is legal, it's copyrighted, and then pay the $1,500. So that's another thing that was happening with the sport business that I found out about, and this is what was happening with the Japan team. And I think this is something that started to roll over as far as the Japan team as we started to get going with the $100 million contract. And so that started, and then I think we went ahead with talking with the Japanese representative. So I think skipping over like to 1992, what happened was the Japanese team only had a certain amount of time to really put me in play with the ATP, and they didn't have too many contacts here. So there was some problems. I think the one initial thing was going to Japan. They invited me to live in Japan for 4 years, and I would live there with international sport housing that they have. A lot of times they would use it with the Olympic athletes, other international athletes. So this whole thing with Japan is really just a business deal. It's an international business deal. It doesn't have anything to do with me becoming a citizen of Japan. They knew I had already signed with the U.S. Tennis Center, and I'm a government player, and that still was holding true. They knew I was still a U.S. government player, and so they were going to have me on the international housing. They were willing to pay all the expenses for me. I wouldn't have to pay any money for myself, and they would give me spending money. That was the agreement that we first went over with. So that sounded pretty good. I was interested in doing that. Unfortunately, there was one problem. So by 1992, heading in the summer of 1992, I invite my girlfriend Delilah's back on the scene. And the reason why Delilah's back on the scene is this strangest story, and it's another very interesting thing is when I have these entertainment relationships and this idea of getting married, what happens is they were getting the strangest objection, or really like they were getting turned down from marrying me with their adult film company, with their porn company. And this was turning them down. So one thing about my girlfriend July, which I knew for many years, she just quit. She quit the film company for a while. And by doing that, she exposed that by doing that, they said, okay, you can marry him. You can marry John Riggio. It's okay. Just come back to doing your movies. So by her quitting, she really did up the deal with those people, and it worked good. So that was one really good thing about Delilah. She was able to just quit. She'd rather get married to me. And then the next big problem happened. There was two problems. One was first, the father didn't have legal agency status. So he was not able to collect the money. The money was collected separately. He did not collect the money.
Now, when you say collect the money,
that money, that payout of $125,000.
Okay.
So he did not collect the money. Then what happened to him? He started to get into big trouble. They made an appointment with him. He had to go into Manhattan to meet the agent license department, and he was supposed to appear there. He didn't want to appear. He thought he was going to get in big trouble. And from what I was told, that he wasn't necessarily going to get in big trouble. He just had to make a pledge to really get himself officially licensed. They were going to give him a one-time waiver that he can just go get himself licensed, and everything was going to go okay. Because what happened was I ended up calling the audit division, the license division for him, and they told me the story. And also, since he wasn't licensed, the thing with the daughter was a problem. So he was sort of starting to really take the fall. Unfortunately, her father was starting to take the fall in his life. I don't know why. He was starting to take the fall at this point, and he didn't get the licenses for her either. and they were going to investigate him eventually, what was happening. So the whole thing with him as the agent fell through. But luckily enough, I was able to come through with this whole thing with us living in Japan for 4 years. And the Japanese sponsor, they already researched me, they researched my girlfriend, Delilah June, and they liked her. They liked her as my girlfriend and wife there. So they really liked this idea of her coming with me. They did not want me to live in Japan alone. I guess they know if you're in Japan alone, then you're going to want to go out. Problems could start to happen. They like this idea of her coming with me, living with me on the government sport housing they have. They would give us allowance of money. And she said, yes, she wants to come with me. So 100% certain. So we went over to her father, and her father, unfortunately, did not want to go to Japan. This is another thing now. Did not want to go to Japan. Really, just instead of fantasizing, what happened was he came from a heritage that was Chinese, and her mother came from Italian heritage, and what happened was he did not want to go to Japan. He thought that there was some animosity between his heritage and Japan. And I talked to the contact from Japan, and he was really getting outraged about the father's comments. He was very highly insulted. He was highly insulted that he would say things like that. And he researched the father, and the father, in fact, he thought should be compatible with Japan. He says their last name, there are many people living in Japan that are Japanese. They have the same exact name. So this was a very interesting story, but he really did not want to go to Japan. So this is another stop of what was happening in Delilah's life. And of course, it was affecting me because they sort of wanted me to go there with her. So what we did at that point is this contact from Japan got so outraged at the father. He had such a conniption on the phone that he did not want to do this anymore. So they replaced him with someone else. He stopped calling me. So I started talking to another contact from the sponsor that was Japanese, and he could speak English to me. And this guy was going to take over for that. And he did stay in contact with me for a long time. But this other guy, he did not go over good. So what happened was, at that point, I said, okay, I can just visit Japan right away. So I got my suitcase, I packed my clothes, I drove down to the airport to Japan Air. And they told me to just say, give me tickets and come to Japan. And I said, okay. I went to the desk. I said, give me tickets. I take my car and I could put it in the parking lot. And I get on the airplane and I go to Japan. I had like $3,000 in money on my pocket, and that's it. And then I went there, and they would not give me the tickets. And what started to happen was I started to go back to the Japan Air like so many times to solve this problem. And the problem turned out they were not able to get their paperwork together with the Japan Air and my sponsors. There was some serious paperwork. One was signing the papers for a Class 3 entertainment visa. I wasn't going to go there on vacation. They were still going to have it where this was officially a business trip. And they did not know how to sign the papers, so I suggested why not call a travel agent. So this made me come back more and more and more. I kept doing the same things, bringing my luggage there. And this turned out to a thing where they did not know how to really do this. They did not know how to really sign the papers correctly. And this goes back to the same thing of one person in the Japanese team that in the sponsorship that was not doing good work. And this whole problem at this point, this stoppage that was going on for a few months, caused a big problem for the Japan team. I was given a call by my lawyer again. Hillary Clinton, and she said that since they did not get me playing within this time frame of like 6 months, they reviewed the whole experience with the Japan team, and the Japan team got fined so much money. They got fined $500 million.
Now, is this because they couldn't get their act together in getting you to Japan and other issues involved in that?
Yes,
Hmm.
since they completely could not get me on the ATP tour, even here in the U.S., they could not get me on the airplane by signing the papers. This one person in the Japan office there that they had for the sponsor was really they're blaming him, that he was at
Wow.
fault. And I think even one of the other sport players was also blamed. And this whole thing went to the international court. Part of it was part of the United Nations. They ended up having to arrest the guy who was the sponsor. He was blamed. They arrested him. It went to the international court. So it was $500 million penalty. They reduced it down to $400 million because I played the Pacific already, and I had my fill-in and my spokesman and advertisements were already there in the Pacific. So they reduced it down to 400 million, but they did have to pay the 400 million, and the $400 million was paid. And it was a big embarrassment for Japan. They had a big problem with international sports and things like that.
Now, do you think, and we just got a few seconds left, John, do you think that this guy that created all this chaos in Japan was doing it potentially on purpose, connected to the Japanese team to not allow you to go there?
I think this is the same guy who was really getting frustrated that I was winning all the matches.
Hmm.
And he's the one who had this big outrage on the telephone, like they would call a rant today. He had a big rant with me on the television over Delilah's father's comments. And this guy ended up getting arrested that he didn't know how to sign the class 3 visa for me, the entertainment visa. And since he caused a big problem for Japan, he gave them such an amazing fine, and the fine was paid. But since Japan sort of felt bad about it, the Japan sponsor pledged to stay in contact with me and try to solve the problem. And I think what happened was it might have been whoever they really didn't like hire, maybe they needed to hire a lawyer in Japan on international sports or something to just solve the problem very quick. It went on for years and years. I was even devising ways of going to Hawaii and things like that, and that was starting to work. And they tried to set up matches here in the US and things like that. So I was winning some interesting matches when my opponent didn't show up. I might have won 5 matches because they set up a pro matches, and whenever I was there, the opponent never showed up for some reason.
Do you win by default?
And I won. Yes, I won on default. So I was winning
Wow.
the matches on default, but that's not really the end. The end game was really for me to continue playing. So there were all kinds of interesting experiences going on like that over the years. It was really very interesting.
Amazing stories. What a career. And we started talking about you playing with all these major players. Now it turns into what sounds like an international incident that involving Japan and this guy over there. John Riggio, he is an amazing architect in the New York City area, and was also a major tennis pro back in the 80s and early 90s. JohnRiggio.com, Riggio is his website, johnriggio.com. John, great having you on again. Love all the insight, all the stories. Just an amazing career, and I look forward next time we get a chance to get together and go a little bit deeper in that.
Thanks, Steve. It was good talking to you.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.